My name is Gerald Whittle, CEO of Whittle Consulting. The Whittle business started 35 years ago when my father, Jeff Whittle, wrote the first pit optimisation software. My parents ran a software business over 2 decades, selling mining optimisation software into 50 different countries. In 2001, the business was acquired by Gemcom. Since then, Gemcom has been acquired by Dassault Systèmes and rebranded Geovia, and the Whittle software still exists today. Whittle Consulting has been operating since 1999, that is 2 decades. We deliver a service called Integrated Strategic Planning. This is not just mining optimisation, it's also processing, production, logistics, capital scaling, and sustainability. It's a fully integrated approach to planning a mining business. The mining business is complicated. There's no one person understands the whole system at a detailed technical level. So we divide the problem up into organisational silos. We have geologists describing the ore body, hopefully in a way that's useful to everybody else. We have mining engineers looking at how to deliver the material from the ore body to the plant. We have metallurgists looking at how to extract the metal from that ore. Logistics experts, commercial experts, finance experts, all working away at their own part of the system. The trouble with working in organisational silos is these groups have difficulty communicating and organising themselves. They're starting with different education, different mental processes, different personalities even. And we all know that if we optimise individual parts of a system and add those plans together, that is not the optimal plan for the total system. Integrated strategic planning is an approach that involves cross-functional collaboration, consideration of all parts of the value chain simultaneously, consideration of all time periods in the life of mine plan, and consideration of all stakeholders. So the approach is to build a single model of the whole system. Now, there is lots of data in lots of separate systems, but it resides in 6 or 7 separate independent systems. Now, we're not going to try and integrate those software systems. That would be a thankless IT job. There's much too much variation. So what we do is extract the data and the understanding from the different organisational silos and assemble it in one integrated model. Now, that would be a useful exercise in its own right, because in that process, it's an automatic audit of the plan. And in many cases, we realise that there's some problems or inconsistencies, but that isn't the intention of the exercise. Now, with a complex model of a business, there are 3 alternative approaches mathematically to how to deal with it. One is iteration, where you change a variable, run the system, see what happens. Can be useful, but I would argue in a complex model of a mining system, this is fairly useless. There's too many variables, too many possibilities. The second approach is simulation, where we fire off probably several thousand iterations and hopefully learn something about the way the system behaves. That can be useful for parts of the system, but once again, for such a complex model, probably quite limited. The third approach is optimisation, where we have some very sophisticated software that can actually calculate the right calibration of the variables concerned and give us an answer that is optimal. In constructing this integrated model, we use a technique called activity-based costing. This approach involves identifying the activities that are performed by the different parts of the business, looking for the driver of the cost of that activity, and distinguishing what portion of that cost is a period or fixed cost versus a variable or attributable cost. With a more detailed cost model and the ability to attach the cost to the blocks in the resource model, we're able to develop a dollar version of the block model, We have a geological model, which is the metal contained per dry tonne, but now we have a margin model, revenue minus the selling, processing and mining costs. What we generally find is there might be two blocks with exactly the same grade but a very different cash margin because of the other characteristics like the fragmentation, the bondwork index, the abrasiveness, the density in the slurry, the melting point in the smelter. There's a whole variety of characteristics that affect the value of a block depending on what your process flow is. A key technique is theory of constraints. Theory of constraints tells us that any complex system has a primary bottleneck. It's the part of the system that most limits the performance of the whole system, and we need to know where it is. A problem in mining is it can be very hard to identify. There are so many complex moving parts. Also in mining, it can change, move position over the life of the mine as the ore body changes and we work our way through it. So with a dollar version of the ore body, and an understanding of where the bottleneck is in the system, what's important is to look at the ore body in terms of its dollars, net margin, dollars per bottleneck unit. With a dollars per bottleneck unit view of the ore body, we then go back and re-optimise the pits, the phases, the underground, the mine schedule, the cut-off, the stockpiling, and depending on the process flow, possibly the grind size, the residence time, the mass pull to concentrate, the product specification, the logistics, and the capital scaling of the whole system, because that ultimately determines where the bottlenecks are. The outcome of this approach, dollars per bottleneck unit, is to look at the cash in the ore body, understand the bottlenecks in the system, and maximise the rate of flow of cash through those bottlenecks. If you focus on the flow of cash, then the cash flows. Money has a time value, we all know that. So the objective is either to increase the total cash flow or to bring it forward. Both these have an equivalent benefit. Optimising the whole value chain life of mine plan on a dollars per bottleneck unit basis can be quite profound. In many cases, the result is double the cash flow in the first 3 to 5 years from exactly the same ore body, plant and market assumptions, without necessarily spending any capital. This is the result of aligning and simultaneously optimising pits, phase, underground, schedule, cut-off, etc., 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 through the whole system. The impact on net present value, the sum of discounted cash flows, can be 10, 20, 40, 60, 80%. This completely transforms the economic profile of the mining business. So, what is the recommended approach? A conceptual overview of the Whittle Consulting Integrated Strategic Planning process is quickly achieved via our 45-minute introductory webinar or direct presentation to your executive team. The next step is to attend one of our seminars, held online over 4 half days. Our interactive seminar details the integrated strategic planning approach. We describe how we apply advanced costing methods to identify where the cash value is spatially in the ore body, determine where the bottlenecks are in the system, and outline a list of techniques to maximise the flow of cash through those bottlenecks. This seminar has been attended by over 5,000 mining professionals. In 2019, we partnered with Arie van Niekerk, a mining industry theory of constraints specialist. In Arie's online masterclass, delivered over 2 half days, Arie explains the methodology and how the strategic application of theory constraints and tactical application of theory constraints work together to provide exceptional results. If you decide to progress with integrated strategic planning, the next step is a strategic assessment. This is a short exercise conducted over 2 to 3 weeks, usually remotely. We determine where the bottleneck is in your system, and more importantly, where it should be. We identify the applicable mechanisms and determine the potential uplift in net present value if you were to undertake a full Whittle Consulting enterprise optimisation study. For mining operations, at the same time, we can also review your performance from a tactical theory of constraints viewpoint. For the key bottlenecks, we examine the interdependencies between activities, required buffer management, and consider the operating rules. A prerequisite to strategic or operational optimisation is developing a good cost model. By applying the principles of activity-based costing, we identify activities performed, cost drivers of those activities, and how they relate to cost objects, which are the building blocks of a life of mine plan. We also model the impact on carbon emissions and water consumption. This involves a series of workshops held over 2 to 3 weeks with multidisciplinary teams. The result is a more detailed and responsive cost model for planning and operating your mining business. With mental alignment of the team from the seminar and a positive strategic or operational assessment, we can then consider a Whittle Consulting enterprise optimisation study. There are generally 4 stages, taking around 3 to 4 months in total. Firstly, we establish a base case where we replicate your current life of mine plan in our Proba-E software and validate it. Secondly, we develop an optimise case, applying activity-based costing, theory of constraints, and the 10 steps that are core to enterprise optimisation. Thirdly, we evaluate a whole range of strategic scenarios, including market conditions, technologies, and various scaling and staging options. Lastly, we monitor sustainability factors such as carbon emissions, water consumption, land disturbance, etc. This develops fresh and valuable insights, leading to a new life of mine plan that creates substantially more value for all stakeholders. The increase in net present value is 5 to 35%, or in some cases substantially more. A tactical theory of constraints implementation generally follows 3 steps. Firstly, we examine the detailed activities and their interdependencies. We call this a flow model. Secondly, the operating rules are then redesigned based on theory of constraints principles. Finally, we help establish a regular operations room for your team to self-manage and monitor the implementation. This 3 to 6 month process creates alignment and a new management culture, generally resulting in operational improvement of 10 to 30% in a key constraint in the system.
Whittle Consulting operates worldwide. In the last 10 years or so, these techniques have been applied across all regions, many countries, and all commodities. Whittle Consulting clients will testify that time and time again, the integrated strategic planning process has improved the economics of their mining business by 5 to 35% or substantially more.